Greg Smith here, Rivals.com national recruiting analyst, and we got some more big news for Missouri as they've continued to have news. It feels like day after day, but to break this one down, I've got from Power Mizzou, Sean Williams. Sean, thank you so much for jumping on with me, man, to talk about this big news of four-star safety Charles Bass committing to Missouri.
Yeah, Missouri's been on quite a roll. I had a couple days off, so we got a chance to take a breather. But yeah, Charles Bass is the latest commitment from Missouri, and that's another big one for them. Not only from a ranking standpoint, he's within our top 100 rankings right now. But I mean, he's been a long time target for Missouri. He's been on campus many times, so he's one of their top guys in the secondary, and they were able to land him. And so that's a big win for Missouri for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I want to start. What you mentioned there about the ability to, it's always nice to get kids like on campus and you wow them that one time and they commit. But what does it say about this staff and their ability to recruit when you have a guy that is known long-time target that has been on campus multiple times? Like, what does that mean for Missouri to see that one through and actually get the verbal pledge from a guy like that?
Yeah, I think it's big. I mean, especially considering he's a St. Louis Metro kid,
Yep.
So, I mean, he's in East St. Louis, just across the river. But, he's one of those Metro kids in St. Louis that they love to get. And obviously, he was top guy. He's had an offer for about 2 years now. So, I mean, he's been on campus for quite a while, many times. And I think they got him on campus twice in the spring before he took his official visit this summer. So, I mean, he's been pretty locked in with Missouri and is very familiar with the staff and everything like that. So really good win for them.
Yeah, and he's a kid too that, man, and it's funny, before we hopped on, leading up to all this, I rewatched his film, like to kind of refamiliarize myself, and man, I like his tape, man. He's a player that, to me, I'm not sure, and this is a good thing, I'm not sure whether or not he should play safety. He could play some nickel for you in college as well. Like, I just really like his game, and I like how physical he is. Like, man, he will come up and strike you, and he definitely makes sure to highlight that on the tape as well. So where do you kind of see him fitting in to Missouri's defense moving forward?
Yeah, I think the plan is to kind of be a safety to start out. But I mean, like when I talked to him, speaking of physical, I mean, he does look physical. I saw him at the Under Armour camp in Nashville back in the spring, and yeah, he's a big kid.
Yeah.
And but he told me back then, they like, Missouri kind of likes him as a versatile guy. They said they like him that he can play safety, corner, or nickel. So I mean, he's kind of a versatile. He'll be a versatile DB. I mean, he's big enough too. He might, play a little, hybrid linebacker. You just never know, So, but yeah, they like him in a lot of different ways. Yeah, that's the thing with Missouri, and he's like their third secondary commitment in this class. He'll probably project to be a safety to start off. Dylan Williams will be a safety, and then they got the cornerback Mark Manfred as well. A lot of Missouri's secondary commitments in the last few classes have been kind of versatile kids, kids that could probably play corner and safety and kind of move around in the secondary. So.
Yeah, and that gives you so much versatility, and just like you can do so many different things with your defense when you can stack guys like that in your class. It's why guys like Charles Bass are so highly coveted, because you can put them in a number of different, not only defensive styles, but within your own defense, they can play a lot of different roles. Like he's talked about kind of what they have envisioned for him. You kind of mentioned too, and this has been coming into this commitment, just an amazing run for Missouri. I guess two-part question for you. One, what has it been like to kind of be, in the thick of it covering this run? And two, what has kind of stood out to you about, I guess, some of the common themes of why they've kind of been on this run when you talk to all of these kids?
Yeah, well, for one, to answer your first question, it's been fun. I mean, it's definitely different. And me and Gabe have talked about it on our podcast and on the site. It's a different realm of Missouri recruiting now. You kind of started to see that in the last year or so. But especially, they're capitalizing off the year they just had. They finished with 11 wins, are in the top 10. They beat Ohio State in the bowl game, so they're capitalizing on that. And I think the biggest thing with you just talking to these kids is just, the relationships they got. And I think the coaches really, kind of convey to them, it's like, hey, we're building something special here, and they want to be a part of it. And I think, the staff really did a good job. You look at all the commitments they've had. I mean, pretty much all these guys came in for visits during the spring. So, they've done a good job of getting them on campus multiple times, before they took official visits. So it wasn't just like hey, I'm on campus one time and I'm going to commit. They're really familiar with the program, coming in for multiple visits before they make their commitment. So.
Yeah, and I think that there's something too that when I've talked to a couple of the kids that have committed, not just even just in this most recent run, but even before that, and the one that sticks out to me is Jack Lang, the offensive lineman,
Mhm.
that from inside the state, and he told me he was like, "Hey, this is as good as I feel like the program has been in my life, like of kind of following Missouri Tiger football, and so why not stay here and why not go there and continue building on something special?" And kind of what you mentioned about there's this feeling around kind of the program and with these recruits coming in that they're really on the verge of doing something special, which is neat to see, right? It's kind of cool to
Mhm.
see a newer program kind of try to find their way of busting into that mix of be kind of taking that next step as a program. So that's cool to see just as a kind of a fan and observer of the sport. But then the other thing that you mentioned, and I think is key, and you don't always see this, is being able to capitalize off of the success that they had last year. One of the things that we've talked about kind of like at large about like Michigan, for example, even though they've had a little bit more success here recently, they don't seem to have been doing that for coming off of that national championship. And they've got a little different situation because you lose the coach, even though you have the continuity. But
Mhm.
give credit to Eli Drinkwitz and his staff for being to actually capitalize on that momentum and keep that ball rolling because it does not seem to be stopping.
Yeah, I mean, they had a plan, and they've been really patient. I mean, like kind of heading into the summer. They only had a handful of commitments, and you're sitting there thinking, well, I mean, what. But then they were patient. And we kind of mentioned that on our site. They were
Mm-hmm.
keying in on top tier guys, and when you're kind of battling blue blood programs
Oh,
for those guys, you got to wait. You got to kind of
yes.
bide your time. They're going to take all their officials. They're going to weigh their options, and then all of a sudden, we're seeing like a string of commitments here from Missouri, and they're getting most of the guys that they really wanted. So,
Yeah, anytime you get those priority one guys
mhm.
that you wanted to get, you're doing something right, even if it causes, like you said, some hand wringing on the front end from the fan base. But after getting the 4-star safety Charles Bass, that I did just a fantastic player, ranked in the top 100, kind of spinning there for us, Sean. I guess who's left on the board? Like, are there any positions that you kind of say, okay, they still may need to go grab someone there, or are they kind of done at this point?
I really think like I honestly think like kind of two priorities really. I mean, in terms of uncommitted guys that are still out there, and that's
Mm,
Yossi Epinesa, the defensive end,
yep.
within our Rivals 250 rankings. And then we also have offensive tackle Andrew Babalola. He's still out there, and both those guys took officials to Missouri during the summer. Missouri's got a really good offensive line class right now. They got four
Yeah.
commitments, but they would definitely take a they would definitely take a commitment from
Yes.
Babalola. They've been recruiting him pretty hard, and I mean, if they landed him, I mean, you got to nominate Brandon Jones for recruiter of the year on
For
that
sure.
staff. But yeah, those are the two big ones that kind of come to mind in terms of uncommitted guys that they had in for officials during the summer. I can also see they've also missed on some tight ends. You had Brody Lennon in, who committed to Ohio
Yep.
State, got picked up the offer, committed to Ohio State. They also
Yeah.
had Chase Lofton in for an official, and he committed to Florida State. So I could see them maybe taking a flyer on a tight end during the
Okay.
fall. They could also maybe add another running back to go with Jamari and Morrow. I think their initial plan was to maybe take two. I don't know if that's changed, but those are probably positions that they'll probably evaluate during the fall and see if somebody kind of pops up, and maybe they offer somebody new, or maybe they try to flip somebody now. I mean, they're kind of in that position where they could probably try to flip somebody later in the year after they evaluate people, and they're kind of at that point right now. So
It's a great point to be at. Like, I bet, if you're their coaching staff, you're like, okay, yeah, we'll definitely take this. We get a lot of our top priority guys in the summer kind of in the boat. They'll come back for game day visits and that kind of continue to
mhm.
feel the love. And then all the meanwhile, you can keep your eye on some flip targets because, by the way, they end up having another good season. There's even more guys opened up to you, right? So I think
Right.
that Missouri's in a really strong position right now after this huge summer. And this is something that we'll definitely continue to circle back on and talk about and monitor as the season goes on, because they're going to be a really interesting storyline moving forward. But that's going to do it for us on this video, kind of breaking down the impact of Missouri landing 4-star safety Charles Bass and what's going forward for Missouri. Make sure you pop over to powermizzou.com to check out all the continued coverage of everything they've got going on. Check out Sean Williams' work over there. To keep it locked on rivals.com, as we'll have continued coverage of all of the stuff going on around the country right now. We will catch you guys later.